All right, welcome back, everyone. We're going to be restarting the workshop. We have one more presentation and then a discussion section following that. For this presentation, I'd like to introduce Monique and PG&E. Does this look right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
All right, so I have my notes. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I guess I'm last, so I'll try to speed it up. But for those that don't know me, I'm Monique Montague. I'm the gas engineer with the gas RD&D team, and I'm responsible for the SB 1371 or emission reduction projects. I think this is my 6th winter workshop now, so it's actually really nice to have it in person, see so many people that have been with the program for so long. So today I'll be going over our updates with you. Most of our projects this year were continuations of last year, so you might seem a little bit repetitive, but we made great progress and I'm excited to share it with you. So how do I skip to the next?
Page down.
Page.
Just the arrow button needs to be clicked on.
Yeah, okay, maybe that's what it is.
Then you'll be on it.
Oh no, it's not working. All right, I'll just manually scroll through. Okay, so in 2025, our leak survey team deployed a new drone sensor into operation. And so for those that don't know, we previously already had implemented a drone sensor specifically for waterway crossings. So in this case, we were looking for something that we could use for broader applications. And so our D&D and leak survey teamed up and we essentially piloted a couple of drone sensors back in 2024. In 2025, we narrowed it down to a single sensor. Initially, the POD was very low when we tested it. So what we did was we modified some of the conditions and the flight patterns in order to increase the POD until we were comfortable. Because of the success of that pilot, we actually deployed it into operations in conjunction with our RKI unit, which was already deployed in 2025. Oh, now it's working and it skipped down. Okay. Moving on to our second deployment of the year, it was our Bridger Photonics gas mapping lidar. So that is a sensor on a helicopter, and we deployed that for our transmission leak survey. We've been testing this for a couple of years now. Initially, we did a mini pilot. They also did a specific PG&E demo for us. And then we also participated in a NiSearch study. And what we were doing was kind of looking at different applications for the system, whether it be distribution or transmission assets. Nice thing about the Bridger Photonics GML was that the localization capabilities were substantial. And so due to really promising results of our pilot, we actually deployed them into operation in 2025 for our transmission leak survey. Okay, sorry guys. I don't know why when I click down, it goes up, but anyways, that's a neat issue. So next up is our update on our continuous monitoring at underground storage. So this is a project that we've been working on to try to use in lieu of our daily wellhead leak survey. As you can imagine, it's not only costly to do a daily wellhead leak survey, but it also doesn't significantly help reduce emissions or enhance safety, whereas a continuous monitoring system can kind of do all of the above. We tested the technical specs of various sensors. We picked the best performing sensor. And then we worked to really deploy the system after we proved out the concept. Unfortunately, we had expectations that this would be fully deployed into operation in December of 2025, but due to manufacturer supply chain issues, it was barely delivered last week. So unfortunately, we haven't operationalized it yet, but it will be soon, very soon.
Is that McDonald Island?
Actually, no, it is at our Los Medanos storage facility. We decided to start with that because it's smaller and it's a lot less complex. We wanted to prove out the concept first before we went ahead and tested it at our McDonald Island, because I think you've been there before, but it's quite chaotic there. So
Los Medanos is probably closer to your office too, right?
yeah, it's also 5 minutes from home. So that's
okay, nice.
But yeah, so in 2026, we're actually looking to do something similar at McDonald Island. It would be a completely different setup because the storage facility is just absolutely different than what we have at Los Medanos, but it is in our future plans to pilot something very similar there. So Moving on to our alpha pilot. So I heard you guys heard me talk about this project last year, but essentially we've been testing the alpha tape product, which is a silicone-based polymer for our meter set leaks. And initially we started with a mini pilot in-house, which was just 4 meter sets. It did very well on those 4 meter sets, so we expanded the pilot to 38 meter sets. Of those 38 meter sets, we were ultimately able to get the success rate up to 100%. However, with that being said, operations did flag this as a potential issue. And the reason is, while the product absolutely has proven to work for us, it is a steep learning curve when doing the installation. It is kind of like if you've ever installed pipe dope versus like Teflon tape. It's completely different, and it takes a great learning curve in order to prevent a leak. So operations kind of flagged it and thought, we need to do further studies with the putty product. And so the putty product is more of a foolproof product. It's exactly the same chemical structure. It's just in the putty form. And so when you apply those in conjunction for the distributor, it should be an easier application process, as well as take less product for the tape. So what we're doing now is discussing internally how that's going to look. We did run a GTI study this year that actually just completed last month on the putty product itself in lab, and it was able to hold up on all the samples. So we're going to be expanding that probably into the field sometime this year. If all goes well, hopefully we can finally deploy this product, because so far it has proven to be a good product, as well as have some really great use cases for PG&E. Moving on to our purging emissions. So this year we did 2 demos at our Winters Gas Safety Academy, and that was on 2 vacuum purging systems. So if you know, traditional purging methods really result in quite a few emissions to the atmosphere. They can also pose safety risks to the personnel that are performing the purge. So vacuum purging systems have the ability to really reduce emissions and improve safety. So we had invited OTD as well as the staff to come out to our Winters facility to do 2 demos for our operations teams early in the year. And so this is a photo from one of the demonstrations. Both technologies were successful. They both proved out very well. So we've kind of passed this project on to operations. They're looking for field projects to do some further testing on before they decide on the next steps. I think they did 2 already, but in terms of next steps, they're still working on that. So hopefully I'll have a better update for you on this next year. And then just to close out, I have a future potential projects listed on here. I do want to be transparent. I have some notes from our principal gas engineer with respect to what's going on with our program. So I've always been very transparent with this group. I want to continue to do that. And so for those that don't know, our 2024 and 2025 annual plans were denied by the commission. And so we've kind of gone back to the drawing board. We're planning to resubmit in March. These are some of the ideas that we initially had for project ideas for 2026, but again, we're evaluating with all stakeholders. Some of the ideas we had were new ALD technologies, investigating all damage emission rates, analyzing smart meter MSA data, kind of similar to what SoCal did, top-down flyovers to really quantify the emissions, piloting fixed-wing aircrafts for leak detection, working on a passive mobile detection system to improve our leak find rate, and then scanning drones for aerial leak detection. So with that, I'll go ahead and wrap it up and open it up to questions. Thank you.
I'll go. It seems like there's a lot of similarities between some of the things SoCal has been working on. Is the helicopter deployed LiDAR, is that the same vendor, I think, even the Bridger Photonics that SoCal, you all been using with your aerial?
Yes.
And PG&E's been successful at incorporating that into some transmission line,
Yes.
but you're not necessarily doing the comprehensive territory scanning like
Yes. No, we've taken a different approach. So I think SoCal uses it in the same way that we use our super emitter program with the Caparo car. So we use it for, we have a very different use case. We use it for transmission leak survey.
and
for
that
compliance.
squeezed through your last GRC? You got funding to continue doing that?
I have leak survey on the line, so I can divert to them.
Wow. Okay, then you also talked about studying various tapes and putties and things for MSA. That sounds very similar to what SoCal has been experiencing. Was that even maybe some of the same material that they've tested?
So Eric, I don't think you guys have tested that,
I
correct?
think it was a different sorry, Eric Rodriguez, so I think it was a different approach. We were looking at Siemens to prevent from these from happening. This putty is more of a quick fix.
A repair?
Yes.
The pipeline repair.
Yeah.
Well, if there's any cross-pollination that would be helpful, I would just encourage y'all to chat.
No, I appreciate it.
I have a question. Captain Gazala, for the natural gas storage facility, so just like to the attention facility. So I know those all have currently installed on. So new technology. So
Yeah, so
or like the oil and gas one.
yes, exactly. So I think what you're referencing right now is the ambient monitoring system. We do have those installed, but this is specifically for part 2 of the COGR requirement. And that's where it states that you either have to survey the daily wellhead leak survey once a day, or you have to have one single sensor per wellhead. So it's not an ambient system. It's more so like a single sensor per every single wellhead to determine if there's like a loss of containment or to give early sign indicators of something like that happening.
We have one question from Wynn online.
Hey, Wynn.
Hi, Monique. Similar question to SoCal Gas about using tape to reduce emissions. How difficult for you to apply putty in this case, given that, can be dusty, can be rusted, and at what point that you feel like, okay, putty is not suitable in this case, either the leak size or the materials or the age of the meters. Can you describe or share with us?
Yeah, sure. So actually the putty, we haven't done a trial outdoors yet. So that'll be something that's interesting to see. But initially we had that thought with the tape because when the distributor came out, we had them come to one of our facilities and do a training session for our GSRs that we're going to be installing. That was actually one of the concerns that our operations teams had because you have to have a very clean environment. And while it worked well in lab, it doesn't always work so well in the field. But believe it or not, and to our surprise, it withheld on all 38 meter sets. We were able to get it to 100%, and those are in not necessarily the cleanest environments. There are protocols they have to follow. So I think one is using a wire brush to kind of clean up any excess, like for example, on the meter sets that are aged, like you mentioned, or rusted over. But actually, we haven't had any problems with it. But you're right, a putty is a different type of material, and that's something that we'd be curious to see. So I'll have a better update for you hopefully next year on that.
Thank you.
No problem.
I actually have a question on that. With the putty and the tape, is the goal for this to be a temporary repair, or is it something that you would keep on for extended periods of time? If so, like how long?
So we've benchmarked with a couple companies, and a couple of the companies use it as a permanent repair, and a couple of the companies use it as a temporary repair. So it's something we're still exploring. But from what we've seen so far, it's withheld, gosh, almost 2 years now. And so we're thinking it could potentially be a permanent repair, but as of right now, in our minds, it's more of a temporary repair. Because I think every frequency when the survey cycle comes out, they have to recheck it anyway. So we're thinking at that point in time, they can evaluate whether or not they need to replace, and we probably wouldn't just leave it on.
It only would have to last for as long as that particular meter set is scheduled to be in service. Because I
Exactly.
think it's at least a 10-year cycle for, that's what I remember, meter set complete replacement, right?
I'm actually not sure on that, but
I'm not sure if that's still the case anymore either, but
Yeah.
something like that.
That would be a long time for tape to be on something.
But at least it'd be a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
right.
I don't believe we replace every 10 years for all the meter sets though.
Good to know.
Yeah, maybe something from my distant past that I remember. So, you think it goes longer? You can typically go longer. Oh, well.
Mike's on mute.
I'm sorry, Fred, was that a question? I didn't hear you. This is Mike.
Oh, yeah. So you're pretty sure that actually you might have meters in service for longer than 10 years.
I'm positive of it. I do know in parts of like the Northeast, they do have state regulations around the rate at which they replace meters, and I think they are closer to 10 years. But within California, we've definitely moved to a statistical approach for measuring meter accuracy, which has really extended the life of meters and regulators.
Okay, yeah, my impression was that there was even county regulations about making sure the meter was reading accurately, just assuming that it wouldn't be any good longer than 10 in terms of reading accurately, so that there was like various counties would have that kind of. But yeah, I haven't been in the field for many years, so things could change. Thank you. I don't see any more hands.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you for all those presentations. Before we conclude, we actually had a request to try a little bit different of an approach for the end of the workshop. We're going to have a open discussion section. The themes, let me get up the point here for that. So we have a series of questions and topics on the current and future state of the natural gas leak abatement program. This period will be open pretty much just like any of the question sections. If you have any comments or questions, please raise your hand. Same as online, go ahead and use the raise hand function, as well as please try and remember to say your name and your organization or utility when you speak, just so everyone can kind of know, track who's talking. I will do my best to try and call on everyone, and we'll just kind of see where the conversation takes us. So the first item that we will be discussing will be question number 1. Are there considerations of additional natural gas leak abatement program goals? So if anyone has any comments or questions on that.
Right, can I just make a suggestion? Maybe if we want to go through just all the questions.
Sure.
And have a specific.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give all 3 questions, and if anyone wants to make a comment or a statement on any of them, please just feel free, and we can jump off from there. So the first question will be that. Question number 2. Are there any emission reduction technologies that teams are aware of that have the potential to reduce substantial emissions, but are not yet widely available or cost effective? And then question 3, hydrogen blending demonstrations are being conducted in California. Are there any plans to modify the reporting framework to account for gas that may contain a percentage of blended hydrogen? I'll leave it on question 1 for now. I think the question 1, I think it'd be helpful if we started with Fred. Did you have any? I know you had some thoughts when we were discussing this question.
So, I mean, if the question is directed to the commission, I mean, there is no formal consideration of additional program goals at this time. I think the question is, has a lot to do with, wow, we've been doing this for 10 years. We've actually exceeded the original milestone dates of the program. I think everybody is probably thinking, well, maybe that suggests that there could be, some changes to what the program is doing. The milestones have been met. What happens next? Do we just keep going as we have been? A lot of times, if the commission, changes the rules, they're usually kind of directed by outside requirements, like the legislature might just pass a new law. It says, nope, we don't like the way that this is going. We want to change the rules. We want to increase something, or we want to back off something. We want to change the rules about leak abatement. And so there would be legislation that tells the commission, hey, you guys, you got to implement something different. That's kind of how the whole thing got started. SB 1371 told the commission, you got to have a program, you got to work with the gas companies to, and so then commission staff will like work on, well, what does the actual, details of this look like, given this legislative requirement? And then that goes into a formal rulemaking proceeding where all the interested stakeholders in the state get to have their say. Usually staff is, me will have the burden of creating an original like proposal, and then everybody takes shots at it. And, we take that all in and say, oh, gee, people don't like this idea. Maybe we should modify this proposal. Then we come up with a final proposal that, goes to the commissioners to be voted out. And then, the 5 commissioners would in a session, have a vote on it. So that's kind of one process that might come up with changes to what we're doing now. If absent there being some direction from the legislature, I think there could be utility generated requests. If we get a nicely worded, set of suggestions from one or more, or maybe even the joint utilities might say, hey, we've achieved these milestones. We think it's time for some changes. You all could send in that. And I'm not exactly sure. There's probably more than one way of doing it, but if you did it informally as just kind of like a letter, staff might take that on and try to move that through our management chain and see if there's any appetite, right, at our executive level for initiating something. That would be less, that would have less power behind it than something like, a legislative direction. I think, we staff may get some direction from executive management that they would like us to start working on something, but I haven't received that, so far. There was a moment of real concern here with the last instance of SoCal submitting their advice letter along with their compliance plan, and my division said, yep, okay, most of your your requests of your compliance plan make sense. They're in line with what we've been doing with this program all the time. We, Safety Policy Division, approve of those things, but of course, the decision broke that down into 2 parts. So we can say we approve something, but if you don't get the funding from Energy Division, it kind of doesn't matter whether we approved it or not. I mean, you would be free to fund it yourselves, I suppose, would be the, the possible outcome there. But we were taken back a little bit that this time around, the Energy Division took a very, very hard view of the kinds of things that SoCal had been pursuing for many years, and it was just kind of in many cases a continuation of the kind of, you had a few new things as well, but they took a very harsh view of what they considered that cost effectiveness was the only thing that mattered. Even though our reading of the commission's decision was broader than that, but our say didn't count at the end. So to me, that's kind of an indication that there may be some appetite at the executive level of the commission to put in some kind of different sets of rules, but I'm just speculating at this point. It's just, I'm kind of like in the same boat as everybody else. We don't know what would be happening there, but at least one thing that's, I think, a, positive direction is that finally now Southern Cal has gotten into the sequence of requests so that you can put your funding requests into your general rate case, and it's going to remove it from this kind of scrutiny that you received from just the energy division folks this last time. Now it's going to be something that all stakeholders can examine, comment on, have testimony about whether they think it's a good idea or not. And so I think it opens up, I think it's fairer process. And it may mean that, in the grand scheme of things, some of your funding requests may not even get on the radar screen of some of the people that are concerned with rate cases. They may be focusing on bigger fish to fry, and there might be easier to get some of your requests through. I'm hoping, I think that could be a positive for the program in that case. But I'm just kind of sharing my thoughts about this. I don't have any information about considerations of it. I think the point of the forum was to, offer other folks any thoughts. What do you think some future considerations might be with this program? Reduction of requirements, an increase of requirements, increasing targets, reducing mandatory best practices. Any thoughts? Anyone can share.
I did see that there was
Yeah,
a hand up, Renee.
Yeah, it's me, Renee. I just wanted to add to Fred's comments from the perspective of I can't certainly speak for the energy division, but as the senior analyst on this proceeding, I can tell you that it was a difficult situation in that we have such an emphasis now on affordability. And this came in as sort of an opportunity, if you will, for some serious discussion of where our goals should be. So, and I also wanted to echo Fred's comments about the next the next GRC will be a great opportunity to defend the key programs within the NGLA that are really making sense, that are really saving, as we've seen today, substantial emissions. It's not that we've abandoned those goals. It's that the program started off in a different cultural environment in California, and it's achieved a remarkable success, as has been pointed out. We don't want to lose that. You know, there may be a retrenchment for the next year or two, but once we have a chance to look at it in a GRC, I think it's going to be a little bit different. Certainly, we're in the middle of evaluating PG&E's GRC at the moment, so I can't really speak to that, but I can say that the GRC offers a much better forum, as Fred mentioned, because we do get commentators and parties that will review and an opportunity for the utilities to defend what they choose as their primary targets for leak abatement. So I do think that's the right direction. More legislation and so forth. I don't think, again, a lot of this is somewhat political, and I don't know that that's going to be the right direction to go in. I mean, that's not my call. That's for the utilities to decide. But I just wanted to add my 2 cents that yes, worked very closely with Fred and Gary on the various aspects of that resolution, and I'm glad to see that there's still ongoing enthusiasm for the program and some of the excellent presentations today. So thank you for that.
Are there any comments online?
I have,
Oh, let's see.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So maybe-
Diana.
Yes, Diana with PG&E, Diana with PG&E. curious if there are other programs the CPC has, has created in the past that are similar, or are we the first ones going through this questions? And I don't know if somebody from CARB will see that's like this.
I wish I had a broader CPUC experience. I've heard of things like there have been like the energy efficiency, there've been like focused programs where goals were set, I think, and I wasn't involved in those, so I don't know like the ins and outs of how they worked out. I think Renee, you've got some maybe some broader experience with other kinds of programs. No.
Well, and if not, for you, that you were part of when this program was created 10 years ago, or was there something in the OIR or in the final order that kind of envisioned when the program would meet its goal, or was it open-ended? Because maybe that could guide.
It's pretty open-ended as far as I have been able to tell. I mean, they said, okay, it was really focused on this 2030 statewide goal, 2030 reduction of 40% of baseline. And it was never it was a soft target. It was like, we'd like people to reach this goal and we're encouraging people to meet this goal, but there was no penalty for not reaching it. It wasn't like a do or die deal. And I think it was just expected that people would work towards that. Mission did create that interim number. I think just to try to be an incentive to spur people towards, getting somewhere with it. Yeah, I don't read anything in the decision about an end, like when do we declare an end to it? It feels to me like a logical step might be to incorporate all this more into routine utility operations and not have such, now that we've kind of gotten to this point, people have demonstrated it's possible. They're very, you all have embraced it and you're doing great with it and you're, really, really invested in it. My opinion is it might make sense to phase this into just like regular utility, another thing that you guys do routinely and not have to have this separate focus. That's my opinion, and that doesn't count a lot. But if I get asked by executive management, that would be the advice I suggest. Hopefully that's I think that.
You made a good point that we learned a lot and we wanted to work, and now we have a better, but that's kind of what doesn't. And
I'm
so I
sorry, I'm
think-
having trouble hearing you. Can you move closer to a mic or something?
Yeah.
There should be one on your table, I think.
I don't know if the microphones go that far back. What we can do also,
There's one.
there's also the portable mic.
She's going to just sit here at the table.
Okay.
No, I was saying that I think, I mean, I cannot speak for all the utilities, but from our sense, we do know which programs make the most sense, and I think we have similar goals in terms of cost effectiveness, and so yeah, I think we're looking forward to working together and maybe propose something to our regulators on how to maintain the program and really, and also increase flexibility, because I think PG&E take the best practices as mandatory, and we've been doing that, and we want to continue to do the ones that make the most sense, right? But some of them were, don't make the most sense if now you're looking at cost effectiveness, for example, right? Like fixing a Class D leak. If it doesn't make sense, how do we navigate that conversation with you and CARB, right?
I'd like to see considerations of relaxing some of those best practices that have not proved to be particularly cost effective. And
Mhm.
I feel it's a bit of a burden on us now. It's like, well, the decision says you must do all of these things. Right now, we can't we can't relax any of those. We just have no vehicle for doing that. Energy division kind of just made a decision that no, we're not going to fund them. So I felt that was kind of a risky decision policy wise, but you know, we're living with it. Personally, but yeah, I'd like to see some modifications made. We can find a way. Getting the commission to agree that that's worth their time to.
I see
Yeah,
online,
well, this program has had a lot invested in it too. So, you know, it's important that the lessons learned and the successes carry forward, I think. I don't want to waste all that investment. Again, speaking
Thanks.
personally.
I see online that Mike had his hand up from PG&E.
Yeah, just kind of back to that comment on, you know, the cost effectiveness of Class D as just the example, but feeling like our hands are tied. Is there no mechanism to seek variance or reasonable reassessment of this that, you know, even within PHMSA or within state regulatory sections, usually there's a process by which you seek regulatory interpretation or variance, and you can demonstrate, you know, cause and what you're doing as alternatives. But is there nothing similar to that in this?
Yes. Hi. Yeah. Fred here again. Actually, there is a provision in the NGLA decision about leak repair that says if the utility can demonstrate that repairs would be excessively costly, they can point that out and request that they not be required to do them. And it seems like this is a super case of presenting that in like a compliance plan, or I guess that would be the right place to do it. And then Safety Policy Division could say, okay, we approve your request to be exempted from that. And then somebody came to you and said, why aren't you fixing these Class D leaks? You could blame it on us and say that we gave you a pass, right? So
Well,
there
I mean,
is,
ideally, right? Yeah, like no blame, right? It would just be really solid, logical discussions about the cost effectiveness and, you know, can we leverage the same funding towards a greater methane reduction in another program?
right. Yeah. So there is that clause is actually in the decision. Ed? No.
Yeah, we made an observation earlier today that the commission looks at risk tolerance in the ramp filing or GRC. And we should also consider whether or not we have an emissions tolerance. You know, what acceptable amount of emissions are we think is allowable given our circumstance, given the NGLA program, whatever comes of that discussion. And that might help frame some of where this program goes. Because we've said 40% reduction, we've gotten that far, but I sense that there's a lot of momentum and we're looking for additional reduction opportunities. But at some point, maybe there is a status quo that we're willing to accept. And then have it become part of the normal operations of the utility. This is what we work to strive to do. And these are the costs that are generated, and that's all funded through the GRC. And if there's opportunities for low-hanging fruit or change in systems or material equipment, then we take advantage of those. We don't stop, but we accept that grade D leaks might not be something that we want to fix on an aggressive schedule or excessive cost basis around that. I'm just throwing that out there from my own perspective.
Yeah.
Others have their hand up.
Oh, there's someone with a hand up.
When,
Go ahead, Win.
Okay. Given that this is an open forum discussion, and it seems like utility companies would like to have this program continue, let's turn the table for a while. If utility companies as regulators, what would you do to convince ratepayers that this program really beneficial and then we should support and continue? What would you do try to convince ratepayers? Anybody volunteer?
Oh, I'll speak a little bit. So Eric Rodriguez, SoCal Gas. Funny enough, I think some of the things that you talked about when we're including the customer emission reductions shouldn't be included is probably the most customer facing benefit to achieve a program. So as a customer, if I have the utility coming in and saying, hey, we think you left the gas stove on in your backyard, we found it or we checked it, and that prevents that, lets me shut it off, it saves me money, it keeps my family safe. That's like more direct understanding of benefits that I would get. Same with the advanced meter research I talked about where we find out hot water leak. Thank you, I'm wasting all this water that I'm paying for that I'm using and gas and I'm finding out about it. So it has more of a public facing appeal than we're fixing the lines in the street. So that's, I don't know if that's an avenue that maybe is more approachable.
Thank you, Eric, for volunteering. Anybody else from other companies?
I would highlight something similar that we've observed with the superemitter program. Again, highlighting the benefit of, I guess, reliability, the reduction in customer overcalls. We went from, I don't know, it was 4,000 on the chart to like a 60% reduction. That's something that impact the customers directly. Less dispatches, less service interruptions. So it's not just about methane abatement, it's about safety and reliability as well. Add that aspect to it.
Thank you. Yeah, something that you probably would like to convince commissioner about continuing this program. But I have a question for Fred and Renee probably. This year is another compliance plan year. Okay. Now that both PG&E and SoCal Gas are in GRC to get the funding. So if they submit their compliance plan this year, what would the hearing for GRC for each company? Is going to be this year, next year? I'm not familiar with the scheduling and the process. Even though I involved with NGLA, I really don't know quite clear what will be involved in getting this funding through GRC.
when does SoCal file their next rate case? May of this year.
May of
They
this
can-
year.
So they're going to be filing the rate case at about the same time they file their next instance of compliance plan. You know, our instruction is to just continue to follow the program where we would evaluate your compliance plan and write a report where we recommend, yes, we approve these things, or SPD doesn't approve these things. What happens with that now is kind of an open question, right? maybe the utility would want to take the SPD report and try to introduce it into the record of the proceeding or present that as, some kind of document.
I think it is listed, this is Crystal Yancey from SoCal Gas. It is listed in the resolution. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Problem solved. Kathleen, did you raise your hand?
Did.
But now you don't.
I think all these comments have been really interesting. And it just made me kind of think more on the kind of the carb side of things where we are trying to achieve statewide, carbon neutrality by 2025. Right? And I think the comments that I've heard, like each ton of methane is going to be harder and harder, whether it's like cost effectiveness or just actually getting the fruit that are hanging really high up there. But we talk about low hanging fruit, it's just going to keep getting higher and higher. Maybe someone would think about like the lower hanging fruit. And then kind of the conversations just generally in California surrounding affordability. I think, something I know CARB is trying to really show is that, you can have affordability and have these emission reductions too. So I guess I just see a lot of value in continuing to have emissions being reduced because in the end, we have these statewide goals that we're trying to reach, but we just have to be cognizant about how we reach them and keeping it affordable for communities in California to keep prices and keep their stoves going. And show that it can be done in a cost-effective way and then also have reductions, right? I'm not trying to solve anything, but I'm just saying that these different threads really do come together. And I think it does provide like a case for moving forward, but I think it's upon utilities to really, you guys are thinking really creatively about this. So I guess just encourage you to tune it and creatively about how to increase.
Jonathan Blufer from CARB. I want to add to that too. I think something that hasn't been discussed and isn't really part of NGLA program right now. Going off of Wynn's first question about, how this is communicated to ratepayers to, should still continue. We all thought about like public health benefits that you're also getting with the reduced, co-pollutants that come with methane reductions. I know it's part of CARB's mission too, and what we're trying to communicate more is, these public health benefits that you're getting from these reductions. So I think that could be part of the conversation too.
Actually, what this Kathleen is all about the part. So what Jonathan mentioned with like community outreach and what you were talking about with like more of the customer facing part, I wonder if part of it, if the next phase is more about the behavioral kind of component, like educating. And I know you guys have done this, like educating customers about, calling when you smell something and things like that, but to really engage with your customers, and then also be able to communicate kind of like what those both. I think it's great.
It's Renee again. I also think that, as I said earlier, the AMM, the aerial monitoring methane abatement, if you had customers that actually were not aware of their gas leakages and the added expense of those, I mean, if you did some surveys of the customers you've notified, that would be compelling evidence that the customer side of the meter is important and delivers customer benefits. And that was a big conversation internally here at the commission about that particular issue. So if you, in your next GRC, if you were to support including customer side emissions, you should, as I said earlier, try to get some data to support that.
Go ahead.
So this is Diana Mejia Sharjah from PG&E. So
along the same lines, we've been thinking, for example, even this, the hydrogen came up, energy also falls into the picture. And so one thing that we as a team at PG&E have been, especially I have been thinking about is, if we know that the goals in California are to reduce emissions, right? And we have some landfills that are emitting, methane. Right now through this program, there really is no way to quantify and measure the benefit of us interconnecting that landfill and trying to transport it to our pipeline, right? Like, and how we take credit for that, right? That the scope 3 emission that actually increases throughput, right? Like, there's no way for us to kind of show how we're supporting the overall goal from CAR to reduce that methane in the atmosphere. So I would be very curious to how, if there has been some work done there and proposals on how we could, document and take, I don't know, and get support to do more of that work, right? If that's something we're thinking about, like, for the next phase.
Do you do that analysis for your GRC presentation? Because those things are funded outside of the compliance plan and are outside the NGLA reporting process. So that would be something that would be additional to what we already report on, but that's not a provision in the decision that requires the reporting that we do now.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, right now we haven't done. I mean, I know in terms of RNG, we're early in the process. I know we don't have. I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. I know maybe we have like 5 to 10 interconnections, and in a lot of cases, now you're getting into different contract agreements and there's a lot of core customers. So there's a lot around emissions and documentation of like what type of scope emissions and who can take credit from that. It's an entire different world, but I think it would be interesting to see how the work we're doing right now could support and collaborate with that other RNG, hydrogen, clean fuels, and kind of merge those together. I think that's, and be able to take credit for that, right? Because that's the end goal. How we be part of it.
I mean, that's a really interesting idea you're throwing out. I never considered it before, but just bouncing around with that idea, there's nothing that prevents us from adding ancillary information to our reports that we publish every year. But I don't know that we have the appetite or the bandwidth to fold in the methane savings that you're getting from dairy farm digesters, landfill, and so on. All these other areas where you might have some methane reduction programs from other areas that in the utility. So I don't know. I mean, we could have a chapter of other interesting things unrelated, but I think that would have to be something our management would do.
Right. Yeah. In the words of Francois, how many cows are we emitting?
Internal voluntary goals to increase the throughput of RNG, right? And how do we help with interconnection? And then there's an entire team that manages procurement. They're managing, that's a completely different area of the company. But from an overall emissions, when we're talking about our net zero goals and what we want to be as a company, we're tracking scope 1 through 3 emissions and trying to figure out how are we going to get there through electrification, through leak abatement, through clean fuels. Still early in the process, but I feel like we would love to work on that. Collaboration with other utilities.
Do you capture that data now?
We do. We know what the data is. It's just that it's very small compared to what we do right now with the leak abatement, but the goal is to grow.
But all that methane that is being captured at like a digester and being pipelined over to you guys, that's 100% of all that methane is not being released.
Correct.
And if you didn't, there'd be no point in having all these capture programs to try to capture dairy emissions, or there'd be a far less convenient necessarily fashion of removing those emissions. I like the idea of having a side chapter in our reporting. Say, oh, by the way, here's other methane reduction activities that are being covered by the utilities, even if they didn't cause the emissions to begin with. Could it be allowed? I mean, you've already met the goals of the program, so it's not like we have to worry about crediting those against the commission NGLA program. It would just be like side information, be a way of getting it out there in a way. I don't know if you have otherwise you just have to publicize it on your own website, I guess.
Yeah, the corporate sustainability reports, that's typically what I see companies are doing, or people are doing, that's where they highlight those reports, but I think it, yeah.
Don't the programs that fund those digesters and landfill programs, don't they require some sort of estimate of that they collect themselves?
And so that's,
They
I
do.
think, again, I'm not familiar with all of the info, but that's where you're getting to the cap and trade kind of cap and invest program, and if you're the emitter and there are credits, LCF, I don't know, there's an entire paper world there, but I know you get.
You guys collect that information?
No, I mean, I don't want to say anything because this is not our program. There's a whole team of people who are working, because it really does sound like avoided methane credit and, you know, whether or not Socal Gas could, or, you know, any utility, could, you know, get credits for that. And I don't know how that whole system works, because I know Socal Gas and other utilities get certain amount of credit. And then sometimes it's like the producer, right? That's all I figured out in that program. Happy to facilitate that conversation though. If something like NGLA is something that you might want to think of as like methane abatement. And if that is, you know, credited toward like the massive, you know, whatever credits you have, but like deficits that we have accumulated through the gas, the fossil. But that's definitely a different conversation. Happy to facilitate it with our team, but something that I can always.
I would just like to add, this is Renee, that I want you all to be clear that in the Socal Gas case, in resolution 3605, we did tell them that they should incorporate their NGLA program expenses and biennial NGLA compliance plans in their next GRC or other application proceeding in which recovery for costs is it. But we are really trying to get the GRC to be the focal point for this program. So if you want to include other aspects of methane abatement, the GRC is the place to do it. Make that argument.
Put your best marketing hat on.
All right, well, we are, I know, I don't want to cut the conversation too short, but we are getting near our time deadline or our scheduled ending 4:10. I know we have other questions. I'm not sure if the room is up for discussing them or review and determine if anyone has any comments on these last two questions or not. One would be a question of any emission reduction technologies that teams are aware of that are not yet widely available or cost effective. And then the other question is regarding the impact of hydrogen blending on the program. I don't want to, if anyone has any comments, I want to make sure that someone has an opportunity to state that right now before we close.
Well, question number 3, no. We don't have plans to modify the reporting framework, but if you would like to suggest how to modify the reporting framework, send that to us as a request and we'll do our usual CARB CPUC consideration. And if we think we can modify the template to make note of or accommodate presence of hydrogen in your emissions, we'll make that, we'll consider that and make that determination.
I think we can do it.
Number two, that would be more for our experts out there in the engineering world that might know of something they'd like to share with the other utilities present.
You know, we kind of do have the R&D section, the presentations that covered a little bit of this question, it seems like.
Yeah.
So Kevin from PG&E, something I'm noticing is with more RNG interconnections, the analyzers that are present there, they are venting devices. And so we're getting an increase in some vented emissions. So I'd be curious if there's any ideas about how we would mitigate those. I don't know if like a very small flare or I don't know, just throwing an idea out there, but that seems to be like one area where there's potential for increased emissions that we didn't mention today.
So you've got an analyzer hooked up to the incoming RNG stream because you want to make sure it's not going to poison
Exactly.
your main
Yeah.
gas supply. And I guess there's just naturally some venting from
Yeah.
that device.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know, put some kind of measurement on and figure out how big of an emission it actually is, or
Yeah, so sulfur analyzers are classified as high bleed devices, the manufacturer that we have installed currently. And so I noticed a handful of them pop in for inventory, 7 skiff roughly is, I think, the manufacturer estimate.
so do we need to add a special category or could it be reported under one of the existing?
It'll be included in the analyzers as existing.
That's RNG gas? That's RNG. That's RNG gas.
Sure, but that would eliminate it otherwise.
Yeah.
That's kind of a block.
Would have been-
This is the same conversation, right? It's RNG, so would have been emitted if it wasn't captured, but now it's,
I get, okay, so the point you're saying is that in a way, PG&E is being penalized for capturing gas that would have otherwise been emitted because now it's being counted as a bleed.
That's not
bleed device.
the point I was trying to make, but yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, was I miss?
No, the point was about how could we mitigate those emissions?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it's even with those, instead of 100% of that RNG.
Yeah.
Getting reduced, it's now 93%.
Or
But you're not getting credit for the RNG that much a year.
Be penalized for the release of some.
Right, from the analyzer.
But you should at least modify the credit you're receiving for the RNG. If you were receiving.
Or if you were to receive credit, yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Are there any hands up online?
No.
All right. Okay. Well, otherwise, I think it's a good time to call the workshop. Thank you so much for all the participants, all the presenters, all the great questions everyone asked, everyone in person online. Thanks, Joe, for helping with the IT. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a safe travel home and good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.